Grace and peace. Welcome to the Halftime Pod, Shylin. And today we're going to talk about getting older. You know, hip hop turned 50 years old, and there's been all kinds of celebrations. There's been playlists. You can look on YouTube and see all kinds of things that are alluding and celebrating the fact that hip hop is 50 years old. And when you think about certainly the founders of hip hop, like we talked about earlier, Kool Herc, Grandmaster Flash, the pioneers, these dudes are in their 60s and 70s. Melly Mel, cats like that. But even some of the most popular people today in hip hop are in their 40s and their 50s. And it's an interesting dynamic here because hip hop for so long has been associated with youth culture.
Right.
So what do you do about the fact that so many in hip hop are aging and getting older? In our culture at large, aging and getting older is frowned upon.
Drastically stop down aging. Dr. Oz reveals the number one thing you need.
Now let me just blow your mind.
Stop aging now with this supplement.
Johnson is spending $2 million a year to be 18 again. That includes blood transfusions from his teenage son.
It's why people dye their hair as it's getting gray. It's why there's all kinds of surgeries that people have, right? Searching for the proverbial fountain of youth. In our culture, American culture, we don't know how to deal with getting older. It's looked at as a negative thing. But when you consider what scripture has to say, it says things like gray hair is a crown for the aged. There's a completely different perspective on getting older in scripture because getting older in scripture is associated with getting wiser and growing in the things of God and the ways of the Lord. And so what do we do as those who are crystal urbanites, thoroughly urban, thoroughly Christian, as we are getting older? You know, I went to the eye doctor recently, and it was crazy because I'm there, and I knew I needed glasses because it's like I'm reading, and I know like the font hasn't changed, but it's like it's getting further and further away on the page. I look at my phone, and it's like this mug is blurry, right? And so I'm like, all right. My wife is like, you gotta go to the doctor. Yeah, typical dude. Like, I don't, when it comes to doctors and stuff like that, I don't really trust. That's a whole other thing. But so I go to the doctor or the eye place, and they put that chart up in front of me. You know, that big chart with all the letters. Yo, I got down to the second row. After that, it was like, it was just all blurry. I couldn't see nothing. Like, second row. I'm trying to like this. Like, dang. I'm getting older. And so I said to the doctor, I'm like, yo, is there anything that could be done about this? Like, I've heard about like laser surgery and stuff. He said, this joint hit me. He said, unless you can do something about them numbers on your birth certificate, like you ain't gonna be, it ain't too much you can do. Like, so the idea is that like, this is the age you are, and this is what starts to happen as you get older. And so, yeah, I'm dealing with the aftermath of that, and like even the humiliation of like, it's time to look at my phone. out come the readers. Gotta throw them shorts on. And I've gotten to a point where I'm a little bit more comfortable with it, but it's still like, because otherwise I'm not going to see it. So all that to say, like, aging is real. This is the Halftime Pod, Psalm 90, verse 10. The years of our life are 70, maybe 80, right? And so hip hop is 50. The average lifespan is about 70. And here we are as men in our 40s and 50s having to grapple with the realities of aging. And so we're going to chop it up. We're going to talk about it.
Let's go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's go.
I want to welcome my brothers, my co-hosts, Brother Deuce in the building. Yeah, standing firm in the Lord.
Let's go.
You know what I'm saying?
Let's go.
Let's get
Grade up.
You know what I mean? Yeah, we're going to talk about the grades. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got Brother Ben.
Yes, sir.
How you feeling?
I'm good, man.
Good?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just throw this question out just to get started. Is there a moment that you can think of when it first hit you, like, wait, hold up. Like, it's different. Like, I'm getting older. Like, is there anything that you can point to, any memories, something that comes to mind on that front?
Oh, yeah. I've never been a coffee drinker. When our number 7 was born, the late nights and like being able to bounce back. And I've also been a night owl. So like not getting a whole lot of sleep and still being able to wake up and be relatively okay was never a thing until Emmanuel. When God visited us with number 7. And he was like, you need coffee in the morning. And so like that was the first time. And I don't particularly like the taste of it, whatever, but I was like, I need a slap in the face in the morning. And
wow.
Yeah,
so
it was
it's
like
purely utilitarian.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I've come around a little bit, but it's not like, I mean, if Mountain Dew was, anyway, I'd be in trouble if other things were, I like that. But coffee, nah, not really. But yeah, that was the moment when I was like, okay, age is starting to, you ain't 23 no more.
Right. How about for you, Deuce?
Yeah, three things simultaneously, almost at the same time, I should say. My hair started falling out. My hair started graying, so that's A and B of the same. I started having issues with my knees on the basketball court. And one of the things about me is my metabolism was always high. Right. So I could eat whatever I wanted, but still stay relatively without a gut or without, relatively. Right. And I started getting the gut. Right. The kind of gut that's the kind you get when it's right. And simultaneously with that, when your chest starts to slant in such a way that you get something other than a firm pectoral.
The droopage.
The droopage. And therefore, those things together and it unrelenting. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
And I've had to grow in that. But again, it's your consciousness of it being the reality is different because it's my reality right now, but you think I'll do this and I'll do that to change it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Again,
Right.
Yeah. So you're doing something with your hair or you're doing this, that. But one day you look and you say it's not changing, and so that happened a while ago.
Yeah,
it was like, oh snap, it's here.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There aren't halftime adjustments you can make necessarily to stop.
Well, you can. I know
you
what
can
you
make
mean.
adjustments,
you
but you
change
can't
the reality.
Stop.
Right. But you have to you have to make adjustments, like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Now I have to work. Somebody used to say, I don't understand how you can just eat whatever you want and you stay. Now I can't. I told you, I had to pull back on 2 things: sunflower seeds, because I actually had some high blood pressure issues because I eat too many of those. But ice cream and cream soda around the clock. I used to do it every day and could do it.
Right.
And then I couldn't because I started it's a lot. It's lost it. Lost it. Yeah.
That's interesting. And you have the physical ramifications of aging, but there's also elements like social elements that come to mind for me. So I remember for me, it's interesting because you never, at least me, like, I don't feel as old as I am.
Right. Me neither. You
know what I mean?
Me neither.
And I don't feel as old as people see me as.
Wow.
Right? So I remember for the longest time I was looking for a mentor. I was looking for a dude to be that dude for me in the next generation. You know what I'm saying? Who would just come on, just pour into me. I remember being at my first church, like just looking for dudes. Like I will sit at your feet. Just will you just give it to me? I'm here. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I remember lamenting the fact that it was so hard to find a mentor. And around the time I was like 35 or so, there's a dear sister in the Lord who had served as a mentor for her and her husband, for me and my wife, and I was talking to her like, I'm still looking just for more mentors, and she was like at the time she was in her 60s, and she was like, I'm gonna be honest with you, Shy, you're in your late 30s. I think that ship has probably sailed for you.
Wow.
Because at this point, I think people are looking to you to be that.
Wow. It's good.
And that moment just hit me like, yo, I'm gonna need to be for others what I haven't had for myself. But then the reality, not like people see you in a certain way. So even beyond the public platform and all that kind of stuff. But just the fact that you're older, like they look at you in a certain way.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So just that social effect is something that I feel like I'm still kind of coming to grips with that. But the older you get, the younger it seems everybody else is around you, and you really start to feel that. So and from your standpoint, any other things like that in terms of the social ramifications?
I remember just talking hip hop with somebody, and this was maybe even 7 years ago or something, and I mentioned Nas in a conversation, and the response was kind of like, "Oh, you old." Like just straight up like, "Oh, you're old."
Right.
And I was like, and I think they thought I was a little bit younger. And when I mentioned Nas, and the other thing too, when Wu had like the 25th anniversary of like the End of the Chamber, I was like, 25 years?
Right.
And I think it's been more than 5, it might be 30 years. Anyway, it just hit me like, so that came out in 93. So when that came out and I was, what did I think was old? And you go back like, okay, so that was like early 70s versus when End of the Chambers came out versus now, like, when I was 13, I would have thought that something from the early 70s was old.
Right.
So like to now somebody who was, like looking back at like a Wu album, like, that's really old. That was like one of the music, so, like the urbanite elements not related to physicality that I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'm there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that hip hop does, though, is it does, if someone may not be, the 50-year-old is still a fairly youthful 50-year-old.
Right.
Again, sometimes you'll look at a Method Man or you'll look at a Jay-Z, and you don't see them as old men.
Right.
You still think they're young men, but the number doesn't say that.
Right.
Again, if you say, yeah, he's 50. A young guy. Again, it depends on what group. Now, if you're with somebody who's 70, 80, they'll be like, oh, you're still a baby, right? But for the most part, no one boasts, I'm 50, I'm young, right? I'm young, right? Yet, you look at them and you say, they seem young. Again, there's still a youthfulness. Well, that puts you in proximity with a lot of millennials and even Gen Zs who sometimes in their mind, they still are thinking the old person looks like an old person.
Right.
So sometimes they'll fail to relate to you according to the seasonedness of your years and the way you see yourself. So they come up and they kind of just talk to you like they're your peer. And I'm like, I'm from that era where I'm like, it's hard for me to hear 20 somethings coming up to me and saying, hey, dude, so or whatever, right? Because I'm from the era where you, like, again, with a 30-year gap, you didn't do that, right? And and then you get around, and when people talk about they were babies, so you'll say, yeah, because when I got on and I did this album, they say, man, I was 2. But you're looking at them and they look very near you. You're like, wait, you kind of look like you near me. What do you mean you were 2? Right. And that keeps happening where, Nas says on one of his more recent projects, King's Disease, he says, man, he'll often mention, I'm graciously aging. He'll say, I'm standing next to rookies and they're looking older. Like they're looking older than me. Right. So there's something about if God could preserve you to have a youthful, preservation to you, you'll find yourself in rooms with people and you'll think you're talking to somebody who's from your realm or from your age generation. And then they'll tell you, I don't even know what you're talking about. Or they'll be distant from you in a way that's like, so psychologically or socially, for me, it's more being in the room with people who, to me, I have kids older than you, but we're just relating as though we're from the same era. Yeah. And sometimes it's a stumbling block in one way or another, either their way of respecting the age gap or the season I'm in, or me just kind of assuming that we should be relating similarly when I'm not accounting for the fact that this person was a baby when, we were in certain seasons in our lives. So it's wild.
Yeah. And I think for me, just looking out at the culture, one of the things that's more like one of the more tragic things that I've seen is the struggle that hip hop has had with aging. Yeah. In the sense that like I said, a lot of these artists are older. Right, you think about the Eminems and the Kanyes and the Dre's and the Snoops and 40s, 50s, and you would think that as the artists are getting older, that the subject matter and the perspective in the music would become more mature. Right, and we've seen the exact opposite. Right. We've seen older men producing content as though they're still in their teens or 20s. You know what I'm saying? Yes. And one question I have is like, because I think it's very important for us as believers, Christo urbanites, try to set a different example, right? Of what it looks like in terms of our conversation, in terms of what we're interacting with, the ways that we're interacting, to set a countercultural example to kind of, remember Jay back in the day, 30 is the new 20, like as he's you know what I mean?
He did it. He was pushing for that.
He was real intentional about that. So what are some ways that we, like as crystal urbanites, can not shrink away from the fact that we're getting older, but actually lean into it? You know what I'm saying? And change the culture in that regard. Any thoughts on that?
We're talking about authenticity and how, authenticity, that's a peak value of hip hop. And so I feel like the antithesis of that, there's sometimes nothing more cringy than like seeing like an old dude trying to still be young, or like somebody like pressing in order to be quote unquote cool. Right. So as we age, there might be the fear like, oh, I'm going to be irrelevant, or I'm going to be seen as useless or having no impact, whatever. But like, in the kind of reverse psychology, there can be a coolness or a true authenticity if you're like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna embrace getting older and embrace like that. As we talked about, like different seasons in parenting, there's also just different seasons in life and in your relationships. And you can still have a significant impact and be seen as a go-to person or a person who's highly esteemed if you embrace rather than run away from the fact that, I'm getting a little bit older.
Right.
Well, okay, but now you've got more experience. Now you've seen pitfalls. Now you can embrace guiding people and saying, like, this is where we stumbled. This is what worked. This is what didn't work. And then, there's still like, then maybe in a different way, maybe not as cues of like what's cool or what's popping, but as cues of like, what's my next steps gonna be?
Right.
You can still become like a go-to person and a guide if you do embrace the fact that you're aging. But if you kind of fight that, then I don't know, then the 20-something-year-old and you are like, you're pursuing the same thing.
Right.
They might not, and they will probably do it better than the 40-year-old trying to be 20.
Right.
Well, guide the 20-year-old, instead of trying to be the 20-year-old.
That's good. Any thoughts on that, dude?
But like you said, I made a decision that I wasn't going to die from the gate. One, I didn't want to be
dye your hair.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
I was like, wow, I'm not dying. I'm right. Exactly. Dye my hair. Right. I mean, not out of a masking, because I was thinking, man, maybe I'll do a honey blonde and my chin just artistic. But yeah, I just made a determination that I would not dye my hair. Just because I didn't want to be in bondage to trying to preserve whatever, like, wasn't necessarily like how it would be. If something would have thrown me off my routine, you'd see. So again, I don't mind doing it once people know it's not to mask it, like it's artsy or whatever. But and like you said, it's a walking. Right now, I think the application for me is I'm trying to brainstorm how we can scoop our son's generation up and actually do some father and son things that's very intentional, walking in our fatherness to that son generation. That's more what I'm thinking when I think about leaning into where we are in this season. It's not trying to mask it.
Right.
Not trying to be overly like stay forever young. Right. But also then walking fatherness to the son generation, especially as we get the older sons, for those of us that have older sons, walking with them and pouring into them more intentionally as a father and son dynamic duo, a team, father and daughter teams. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking.
I remember talking to a friend of mine. So back when I was in my 20s, he would have been at the time in his late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. A godly dude from my church, elder, just a real wise dude. And I remember back then I saw him as like you are very mature, like in the faith and just as a human being, right?
Right.
So I remember saying to him, like, I could see his physical limitations at that point. And I was like, do you ever wish that you had like the wisdom that you have now, but just combine it with just youthful strength and energy? And he was like, you know what, Shy? If I had the offer to go back and be 20 years old with what I know now, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I wouldn't do it because I'm closer to seeing the Lord. My salvation is nearer now than when I first believed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would not go back for anything. I'm so close to seeing Jesus, and I love it.
Right.
I just thought that's such a dope perspective.
Right. That's that new covenant reality of outwardly we're wasting away, but inwardly, right, something is being renewed. The treasure is not our external, shell, our tent. Yeah. I said the same thing about the way society is going too. I do have a sense in which I say I don't envy my children's generation, and I'm glad that I'm where I am, and I'm moving toward what I'm moving toward. Because I just feel like I'm mentally I'd prefer to be here than having more of that time to have to wrestle with a less than ideal state, which we were made for what's to come. We weren't made for this. We were made for what's to come. And so now that I can sense that I have less years in front of me than I have behind me, the halftime, right? Peace. I want to climax. I want to go to where I was made for.
Come on.
I wanted it, and I'm glad that I'm feeling that way. So,
Yeah.
And we're told that the glory of a young man is his strength, and the glory of an older man is his wisdom. Right? So there's a glory, just like there's a glory of women and a glory of men, or glory of angels, or glory of the sun and the moon and the stars.
Right.
There's different glories at different ages, and we don't want to reject the gift, the glory that God has given us as we get older, to try to trade it for the glory of a era past.
Yeah.
So I said, like, embrace, as you get older, you're getting more glorious. Particularly as you get closer to glory. So, embrace the glory. And isn't it God and His wisdom that, like, as we get older, and yes, we do feel like, a decrease of our strength, the body wastes away, but like, as a way of preparing us, even of being willing, like, so that by the end was like, Lord, take me.
Yeah.
What lies ahead of me is far better than what's here. I don't want to cling so closely while I'm physically declining, because I'm not sure of what lies ahead of me. I'm in a state of glory right now because of the glory of getting older, and there's a beautiful glory that's ahead of me.
Yeah.
Whatever you have, Lord, in your right hand are pleasures forevermore. What you have in your hand is better than what I can dream up for myself right now.
Wasn't it you all that was saying that, or we were observing that there's a trend, and that is that Gen Z is starting to appreciate vintage? I guess we have to walk our dignity and our self-control and our steadfastness and our soundness that Titus 2 older men should. We have to walk that out in such a way that it looks not like decrepit, but it looks vintage. Again, which is a positive connotation on the very same thing. It's old or it's vintage. Just classic. Right. Exactly. We got to walk that. Yeah. So that it looks glorious, because it's one thing to say it's glorious, and it is, because the Bible says it's glorious. It's another thing for the glory to be seen. By seeing it's not. It's its own thing, and its value is in the fact that it has stood the test of time, and yet it still radiates something that the Bible esteems, which is, again, dignity. Let them be dignified. Let them be self-controlled. Let them be steadfast. And may we display these biblical traits and virtues in such a way that a younger would say, that's vintage. Not that's trash. Take it out and pull the plug.
Age like fine wine.
Right, exactly. Don't crack.
May it be so, to the glory of God.
Let it not crack.
It's the halftime pod. Grace and peace.
Humble beast.
Brilliance Labs.